which probably meant that that was why they allowed it, but she was not going to have our electric cut off. My mom especially, she moved around a lot when she was a kid, and she really wanted to make sure that we stayed in the same school system for stability. That was really important to her. So when we were little, they sacrificed a lot to actually purchase the land that we were on. So we owned the land we were living on outright. And they wanted all three of us to get a college education. So they created a college savings account for each of us. It started when we were in the fourth grade because it was based, actually, I don't know. She might have invested a little bit before then, but the part I remember is that when I was in the fourth grade, when I started getting letter grades, one time that money would come to me, and the next time it would go in my college savings account. So there was both that like immediate gratification, and then there was the like long-term savings idea. And when I say money, I'm like talking about $1 for every A, 75 cents for each B. So nothing huge, since we were living in poverty, but something to help us start thinking about that. Um, and I think about what Travian Shorters was saying, and like the stories that we tell and the ways that we talk about families and students. And all of these things were true of my family. And all of these things were true of my family, but you know, there's probably, I don't know that any of my teachers or the school knew that my mom created a college savings account for each of us, right? And so, how do we think about creating systems? How do we to find out what families' assets are? How do we create those mechanisms for the relationship that are that basis that we were talking about? And then trying to almost be asset detectives in our work. Because in order for students to succeed, we know schools can't do it alone. It really requires families and communities and schools working together. And if we're going to work together, we've got to believe that everyone's got something to offer. So this is our imagine together. What systems and structures could be in place in schools to ensure that at least one staff person knows about the assets that each family has? So I'm going to put that in the chat and give folks a moment while I'm typing it to think about it, but I'll say it one more time. What systems and structures could be in place in schools to ensure that at least one staff person knows about the assets that each family has?
I think having some systems in place that unite the families with whether it's that teacher or is it where schools can have I worked in a district where we had so many families that were kind of ours. So they were based off who we had, but we would go, then there would be times we had half days, and the second half of the day was designed to go out and meet with those families on their turf. So again, it was a small system, but there was designated time throughout the year, and then we were assigned to families um, based, I don't know kind of the ins and out because at that time I was a dean, but we were assigned to people where we went and like met with them. I think it was 4 times during the year and just were kind of their advocate for the school. So,
Where were you at when that was happening?
Frankfurt Independent.
Frankfurt and okay, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
They're they're certified as family friendly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, it's been years ago, but it was a big push. So, and then just the way their calendar worked. And I guess that growing up in that was my first official teaching job, just that push to always bring families into the building. Different ways, like how do we get families into the building, but then how do we also go out and meet families, um, in their community, in the community too. So but there was systems in place done by our district office to make sure that the opportunities were there.
to call on you as you're thinking at that district level to also reflect on this question. And yeah, so what are your thoughts in regards to systems and structures in schools that could ensure that one staff person knows about the assets that each family has?
I think the big thing, and it goes over a lot what Susan said, is you have to, every student needs to know there's a person. And I'm going to tell it's interesting. So I work with our migrant refugee families, but we had a student over our Lily Snow event last week. We were going to end up moving him to an alternative setting. And when they asked, he actually wanted one of our migrant advocates who is no longer migrant. He's like, I just need her. I just need her. And so he emailed her constantly last week. And then she went to the school yesterday and he was like, will you please just come see me? I will do anything you need. So they made their agreement, but it's his person. He has his person. So, and that makes that connection to that family. So then you know what does that student need, but what does that family need? And what can that family also and student bring to the table? And I think a lot of it goes back to what Susan said, like what she was doing and the time. The beauty of what Susan was saying is they offered a half day, the school district did. So they had that time to go make those connections with the families and they weren't asking something extra for those teachers to be doing.
Really important in terms of the system and structure of it. Because and I think about this work looks so different at an elementary, middle, or high school. And I think that sometimes it can feel a little, sometimes when we talk about those kinds of systems and structures, it's like, oh yeah, that's great at the elementary that everyone knows someone kind of thing. But our middle and high schoolers need it, but it requires more processes to say, okay, who's your person? So, for example, I was at a middle school that when they, I don't think they did a great job with the structure of their advisory time frame, but I wasn't a teacher. I mean, I was an educator in working with folks, collaborating, but I got assigned folks, right? So I had 15 educators, teachers in the classroom had like 15 that they had to like know those students and in theory also know their family. We didn't get the time to like make those connections in the same kind of way. I think that would have made it better, but also like doing that, making connections with the families of 15 students or even 30 is a lot more manageable than thinking about the 150 that high school teachers might see each day. So if we don't systematize it, we can't expect teachers to especially at the middle and high school to just do that. There's got to be the system and structure in place. And if we don't, then kids like the one that Shelley was talking about fall through the cracks. I
And
told you all. Go ahead, Susan.
well, I have children now who are in middle and high. So my boys were adopted out of foster care. And just because this is my need, but I feel like somebody needs to know their story. Like if you were to look at my family, they wouldn't necessarily know that. And so because they look like us, and so when we don't promote a big like gotcha day, or it's not just that's just not how we did things. But I always feel like somebody needs to know our story as a parent. So at the other end, I want somebody to know our story. Like, how did my family get to be? What's our background? What's our, I do see that urge now that my boys are in school is as a parent, I want somebody to, like, who's my person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there are parents out there who also, you know, um, like who's my connection to the school? Like, so I think there's a need on both ends.
So that kind of brings me to the next question, which is a little bit of a reflective question. And Shelley and Courtney and Danelle are all in really different positions. But the question is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well does your school or district provide those systems and structures that help staff learn about family assets, family stories, that kind of piece.
I can speak
All
on
right.
our end. Again, like you mentioned, we're in a different role or different realm. We have a beautiful partnership with Head Start. So one of the processes and structures that we have in place involve home visits on every one of our kids before they get into the classroom. So our teachers are provided enough time to get all those in before preschool starts. So that has been a consistent thing that we've done for forever, it feels like. So they have time to sit down with families and really dive into what the family's goals are and what they want and what their home life looks like and kind of help guide, like what they want for their kiddos for the future. So, and also we have a Head Start enrollment office too. And there's 4 ladies that work in that office, and each family member that comes in to enroll their kiddo has a devoted person that works with them, but also a specific, they are given enough time during their time slot to actually have deep conversations with each of those people. So to answer your question on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say um, I don't really know how to rank it. I mean, obviously, we can always do things and look at different structures that we can add, but I feel like our program is doing a great job.
It's like probably one of those places where it's like a 9 because there's always some room to improve, but we're doing pretty good. Um, Danelle, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, I was going to say, sorry, I'm battling pneumonia, so I'm trying to be as active and engaged as I can. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
uh, our youth service center is what we leverage a lot, but we also aware of a lot of situations as administrators in our building. Uh, but sometimes things don't allow for us to directly communicate with those families. Uh, but that's part of my goal as a second year assistant principal is to bring Morgan County High School to that family friendly certification, and I just think it's something it kind of resonates personally with me that you shared earlier with your background from where I came from. I was the first one. I'm the youngest of my 3 older siblings. I was the first one to graduate uh, college. My mom and dad are eighth grade education, the highest of each of those. But I had several teachers that were aware of my situation and were willing to sacrifice, and not put out there, things that was going on, but they knew. So I just want to be that for so many students that we know are in those situations and just try to be an advocate for them.
And I really appreciated Susan's comment earlier in that, like, you don't always know, right? You don't like uh, adoption is trauma. So I'm just gonna like put that out there in term like so I have my brother, my husband's youngest sibling is adopted, and so I've looked into and thought a lot about it, and there's that separation and all of these kinds of things. Even though Susan and your partner, you're doing your best to raise these kids, there's still all these other elements that her children coming into the school system as the principal, as the teacher, the system won't just know. And so it's like we need that for the families that we think we need that for, and we need that for the families that we don't think we need that for. And so it's like, how do we ensure every single child and every single family has there's that system that ensures that no child doesn't get that opportunity for their family to have that connection to really help launch them to success. Shelley, do you want to add about Davis County, where you think you all are in terms of those systems and structures?
Um, So I'm going to say we have a lot of room to grow. And it was really reflective because Davis County's been a part of the Kentucky Collaborative for Family and Schools for 4 years now. And so we've had a lot of work. We had 7 schools get family friendly certified, but we still have a long way to go. We're still cheerleaders and not engagement and true advocates of our families. But we've had a great system in place where we started, and then now we're starting to have discussions on what do we want to do moving forward and how do we want to deepen those true partnerships with our families, because we need it. We need our families. Our families need us, and we need our families. And so we're really trying to start that process of navigating into some deeper and more richer relationships with them.
Shelley. I am going to put in the chat really quick. I know that all of you, I know that Danelle's working towards certification. I know that Shelley has been in the middle of all of that and has seen this before. That link is the Kentucky Kentucky Collaborative Digital Playbook. And then we also have one for early care and education. I'm going to put that in there too for Courtney. Actually, I would say under relationship building, there are ideas for thinking about how to navigate some of that system building a little bit more, and setting those norms. I'll say that I said you could have something that you could use with educators when you left this session. And so in the EdCamp, I've shared the slide deck and I took my example out. And I'd ask you to think about what's a family that you know that it's easy to view them from a deficit lens, but you know they've got assets that you can use your own family. You don't have to. I do that just because it's a lot of what spurs me in this work. But take something that is personal for you without providing, of course, too much student information so that someone's like, oh, I know who that is. And you can do slides 1 through 11 work really well. It gets to the point of saying, okay, now then you say in our school or district, what should we put in place? And you could do this not just with school staff, but you could do it with families and school staff together. And then get families' ideas and get school staff ideas and have them bring up the digital playbook and look at that as well. So you can kind of use it in that way. From the time I got to slide 11, it was just about 20 minutes. So I wanted to kind of like synthesize that in terms of that's what I'm providing and sharing. But I also have a bonus activity that if you have more time, you can also use. So I am going to pull it up, but then it's also in the slide deck that I've shared on there. So I've got case studies that I worked with some staff to share. They are framed in a rural context, and they have 4 different kind of situations in which there is this like clash between family and a school system. And it's a moment where it's like the case study provides enough context so that someone can start to see what the assets are of the family are. And then it also provides the like stop and reflect and what else could have been done beforehand that would have ensured that we didn't get to that clash moment. And then I also have for you some reflective questions in that slide deck that you could use with staff as well. Hey, Courtney, there's only one case study that is framed at a kindergarten level. There aren't ones that are below kindergarten, but if you wanted to work with me, I'd be happy to help you develop some case studies that are early childhood specific and with that asset lens. So it
Sure.
is
I-
okay. Yeah, like
Well,
reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat.
okay.
And we could do that. I used a framework from Harvard with Dr. Karen Mapp's work that I used for framing those. And so it would be pretty easy for you to think about like real situations that you've encountered and you put the information in. And yeah.
Okay. Sure.
It's 10:04, and so we've got like 5 minutes. Anything kind of coming up for you? Anything clicking, any other ideas that you've had that you want to share within this group?
I I do have a question, but it's kind of more specific to my situation. But I just want to ask while I have you on here. So whenever everybody else kind of has their questions out of the way, I would like to ask.
Kelly or Courtney, either of you have anything? No. Okay. Danielle, just go for it.
Okay. Yeah, of course, I have my advisory council developed and all that, and then we've also looked at our self-reflection and kind of getting all those. And I was just kind of curious of, do you have any like uh, sample agendas or whatever that I could use in our meetings going forward, uh, as far as
Your team.
yeah, we're also starting to collect some survey results. Some of that's just coming in because of, the weather and, just trying to get people more engaged, completing that survey and what would be best beneficial for their students. But the parents that I have on my advisory council are, you know, they're excited. They was excited to be even invited. And their input's been very valuable. So hopefully,
I don't have sample agendas, but um, email me after this and let's schedule some time to talk about the flow of those meetings and just and think about kind of what the discussion's been like and where else you all can and need to go. But I wrote down sample agenda because I'm in the process of kind of revamping some of the tools. And so you uplifting that shows it as a need that I can that you'll help people in the future, but I don't have one for you right now.
That's okay. I just want to make sure that I'm heading in the right direction, for our
Yeah.
certification and make sure that, I'm doing what's best for our families in Morgan County.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that there's so much to dig into in terms of self-assessment and family feedback that a lot of the work that I see of that team is that like, where are we at now? What do we need to start or change or adjust moving forward? And so, or stop completely. And so part of that could be like that standing, um, that conversation can be a standing element within it. Like, what else do we know? What more information do we have? Like you're gathering the family feedback. So discussing that family feedback, thinking about what it means. Are there any voices missing from that family feedback? And different elements like that are some of the things that come to mind. But I'm also going to ask Shelley if there's anything else that she thinks about when she thinks about the using that family engagement action team the best because Shelley's been deep in this work for a while too.
When we've worked with our schools with their action teams, we've really gone actually through the rubric. We go through the self-assessment rubric and kind of say where are our highlights and where are some spots that we can improve on. Because I think that just narrowed it. That made it easier for us to start like navigating where are we currently, but also on the rubric itself, like what do we still need to put in place? That's not a checklist. That's really an effective, meaningful piece. And then that's how we move forward. So like with our agendas and our meetings, we would pick portions. So if we were just doing building trust, if that was what we were only focused on, then that was our topic for the meeting. Where are we at and what can we do? And what are some activities we're going to do?
Hey, everyone, 1 minute left for this session. Thank you.
And so that's kind of how we would do. And then the next meeting, we would follow back up on, we completed this portion. How do we feel? Is there anything that we still need to tie up in loose ends before we move into the next one? Because it can be overwhelming when you look at the whole, all the components at once.
Thank you, Shelley.